The untold secret of traders who always win. Warmest greetings from the con trader to all of you. I used to believe that the winners in the market were the best analysts, the ones with perfect entries, those who spoke with certainty, or those who had thousands of followers. But one day, I met someone who had none of that. He didn't post anything, never went live, never shared his views. In fact, I wasn't even sure if he was really trading. At the time, I was just learning how to read charts. I entered trades constantly, updated my charts every hour, afraid of missing even a single pip. But he stayed silent, didn't ask anything, didn't watch anything, didn't say anything. He just sat there, as if the market had nothing to do with him. One day, I asked him, "Are you still trading?" He smiled, "Yes, but only when the market exposes its throat." I didn't understand. Not until a few months later, when the market crashed hard after a sudden news release. Everyone was stunned, every position reversed, and he simply took out his phone, looked at the chart for a few seconds, and said, "See? It broke on its own. I didn't need to do anything." I froze. That was when I realized there's a group of people who don't need to trade every day, don't need to prove anything, and still keep winning, because they don't live in the mindset of needing to be right. They don't stand out, don't show up online, don't argue about right or wrong, yet their accounts keep growing. They've survived for years, not because they're the best, but because they never get swallowed by the noise. This video is the first time I'm telling their story. Not for you to copy them, but so you know that if you've ever felt out of sync with the crowd, maybe you're not wrong. Maybe you're one of them, but you were taught to live loud. Some people say to me, "You must have met them on Wall Street, those old guys who've been trading for 40 years. But no, I didn't have to go far. This group is right here in Vietnam. They don't live in big cities. Some are in the countryside, some by the sea, a few even in the heart of Saigon. But no one knows what they're doing. They don't carry the trader label, don't teach, don't go live, don't show their trades. And strangely, they never worry about money. They live freely, take sudden trips, sit alone at cafes without a laptop or phone, and laugh like they've never known what the market is. But I know they've walked through the market without leaving footprints. One of them once told me, "You know, real trading is not for those who need to prove anything. Only when you no longer need to win to feel worthy does the market begin to show you its truth." I sat there in silence because I saw so many young traders doing the exact opposite. They trade to be acknowledged, flaunt their positions to be respected, insist they're right even when the trade is going wrong. But this group never needed anyone's approval and never had to learn the market's lessons the hard way. I know some people listening now might be skeptical. If they're so good, why has no one heard of them? Precisely because they don't need to be known. They always appear exactly where the market needs them most. If you've ever doubted whether you fit into the noisy style of trading, if you've ever felt too quiet and thought that meant you were left behind, maybe you're not wrong. Maybe you just haven't met the right frequency yet. And this video is the first signal to let you know that they really do exist, quietly, still winning, in a market full of noise. I watched them closely, not just one person, but many. And I noticed they shared the same traits, even though no one taught the other. First, they don't care about being right or wrong. They only care about how blind the crowd is. When the market is loudest, they are quietest. When everyone is most certain, that's when they start to doubt. They don't look for beautiful setups. They look for the gap between expectation and reality. One of them once said, "The market doesn't fall because of bad news. It falls when everyone believes it can't. Second, they trade very little, but every trade is like the final arrow in a hunt. They can sit for a whole month without taking a position, but when they do, they are sure, calm, and don't seek confirmation. They don't split their accounts into 10 small trades to manage risk. They wait for the exact moment and place one single bet that can change everything. Third, they don't need to be right often. They just need to be right when the market is most deeply wrong. They don't surf the waves or chase the trend. They wait until the market betrays its own belief, then strike. And strangely, they rarely enter early. They enter late, but deep. Fourth, they don't attach emotions to trades because trading is not about proving anything. They don't flaunt their accounts, don't set public targets, don't journal online, because they don't need to be seen. To them, a winning trade is the result of accurate observation, not a reward for effort. Fifth, they live like ordinary people, but with an uncanny intuition for the market. They could be having breakfast at a roadside stall, reading the paper, sipping coffee, and suddenly sense the market is about to break, not because of an indicator or news, but because they feel it, like an old woodsman sensing a storm by the smell in the air. None of this is taught. It's not in books, and certainly not in trading courses. It's the distillation of a way of life, a way of being silent, observant, and fully in control of emotion. They don't chase the market. They let the market flow through them like a river, and only when the water swirls do they dip their hand in. I didn't believe them at first. Honestly, they seemed lazy to me, never updating, not trading regularly, never calling out setups, never sharing with the community. I was different. I traded every day, analyzed 6 currency pairs, followed the London, New York, and Asian sessions. I thought, how can someone get rich by doing nothing? But time doesn't lie. After 1 month, I had profits, then losses. After 3 months, I was lost. After 6 months, I couldn't even open my account anymore. Meanwhile, they were still quiet, no losses, no rush, just observing. Sometimes I asked, don't you feel anxious when you're not trading? They just smiled calmly. Do you think hunters just randomly shoot into the forest? Or do they wait for clear tracks before they aim? I still didn't understand. Until one day, the market reacted to an extremely good news release. Everyone was confident. Everyone thought prices would soar. I did too. But after just 3 candles, the price reversed violently. Stop losses triggered across the board. My account went deep into the red. I called one of those quiet traders. He simply asked, did the price rise as expected? I said, no. The news was good, but price didn't move. He gave a slight laugh. That's enough. That's when the market starts to betray its own belief. That sentence stunned me. I began reviewing all my biggest losing trades, and almost every time, the pattern was the same. I wasn't wrong about the direction. I was just wrong about the timing. And I entered because I had to enter. I entered because everyone else was entering, but they waited outside. And when the crowd started screaming and cursing the market, that's when they quietly entered. I didn't take that trade. I just watched them. 3 days later, the price collapsed on its own, and they silently closed their trades as if nothing had happened. From that day on, I started leaving the chat groups, turning off notifications, and stopping trades just to feel like I mattered. I began learning how to live like them, and when I did, I realized the scariest thing wasn't losing trades, it was not knowing whose trading style I was living by. I didn't seek them out, and they never tried to teach me anything. But when I hit rock bottom in my own doubt, they appeared. The first time I met someone like that was in an old cafe in Nha Trang. I was sitting there with my laptop, two monitors, a mess of indicators, and charts flickering just before a news release. I was about to enter a trade when an older man sitting next to me took a sip of tea and asked, "Do you really think price will move the way your chart says it will?" I was caught off guard. Before I could reply, he added, "Back when I traded a lot, I used to think that too. But eventually, I realized the market doesn't follow charts. It follows what people are most certain will happen." Then he turned away as if he'd never said a word. Curious, I started visiting the cafe every afternoon. He'd always be there, sitting alone, no laptop, no notebook, just drinking tea and looking out at the sea. A week later, he finally showed me his account, not to show off, just calmly holding out his phone and opening the history tab. 3 trades in for months, and each one had made more than a year's worth of my trading. I asked him how he knew when to enter. He said, "I don't know. I just act when the market starts lying to itself." Later, I met 2 more people. One was a former military officer living in Corelette growing herbs. Another was a retired engineer in the countryside raising fish. The 3 had nothing in common, yet their mindset and trading style were nearly identical. They hadn't studied together, hadn't joined the same groups or Telegram channels. But they all traded rarely, waited endlessly, and only acted when the market lost control. That's when I realized this wasn't a strategy. This was a type of person. The kind of person calm enough to hear the market scream without flinching. Anonymous enough to survive without pressure to be right. Detached enough to not be swept up in the machine of analysis, but sharp enough to know when to strike. They didn't call themselves masters. They never claimed to always win. But I knew they had lived through this market longer than many of those who were being praised. And I knew that if I hadn't met them, I might still be out there somewhere, looking for one more indicator to justify a trade I already knew was meaningless. I used to be so noisy not online, but in my own head, every morning was a race. Check charts, scroll chat groups, analyze 10 setups, set price alerts, enter trades just to feel like I was doing something. Silence scared me because it made me feel like I wasn't progressing, like I wasn't trying hard enough. Deep down, I believed that if I wasn't trading, I was falling behind. But after meeting them, those quiet people who always acted at the right time, I began to slow down. I muted all groups, deleted indicators, turned off my candle timer. I stopped asking, "Can I enter here?" and started asking, "What is the market believing? And is that belief real?" I sat more, observed more, traded less. Some months, I didn't place a single trade. But I wasn't worried anymore, because I no longer needed trades to feel worthy. And strangely, it was right around the time I stopped trying to prove I was a trader that I started to win. Not big wins, but timely ones. No need to rescue trades. No need to hold on in pain. No need to justify anything. Just listening for the exact moment the market lost clarity and responding in silence, just as they did. I was no longer in a rush, no longer afraid of missing trends, no longer chasing waves I didn't understand. I didn't need to run anymore, because I knew the market would eventually arrive at the point where it betrayed itself. And I would be there, waiting quietly like a shadow, not needing to be right, often just right when everyone else was deeply wrong. There was a time when doing nothing terrified me. Every time I stayed out of the market, it felt like I was losing. No open trades meant no progress. No one asking for my view meant I had no value. That feeling gnawed at every bit of self-worth in me. But then I started to understand trading is not a contest of who clicks more, who's online longer. Trading is a game of who is more patient, who can wait longer, and who can disappear when the market isn't ready. I used to scalp, to overtrade, to split my capital into tiny positions for risk management. But the more trades I placed, the more I felt like I was trying to fill a void. A void named "I'm not good enough unless I win every week." But the mentor I met had no such void, because he had nothing to prove. He only needed one well-timed trade and the peace that came from within. I began to relearn not more tools, but how to breathe slower before I placed a trade. How to take my hand off the mouse when my heart wasn't steady. How to say no to a perfect setup if it came too easily. I no longer forced myself to do something every day. I no longer needed a green order panel to feel like I was on track. Because I had finally understood rightness isn't in the result. It's in the moment you dare to do nothing while everyone else rushes in. One day, I was having coffee in Coelet. The weather was cold. I didn't open any chats. Someone messaged me, "Are you done trading or did you blow up?" I smiled and didn't explain, because I knew when you no longer need anyone to understand what you're doing, that's when you truly control the game. These days, I don't go live often, don't share hot takes, don't rush into trends. But my account quietly rises, and I quietly step out of the cycle I once thought was devotion. Turns out, it was just the noise of someone not strong enough to stand still. And you know what the best part is? Since I became still, I hear the market more clearly than ever before. I'm not sharing all of this for you to idolize the people I met. They're just ordinary people. They eat breakfast, drink coffee, go for walks like anyone else. The only difference is they've found the calm that keeps them from running. And I believe you can too. Maybe you've sat in silence before and known a trade wasn't right. Maybe you've felt yourself chasing the market's noise, but hearing nothing real. Maybe you've never belonged to the group that always speaks up, because you belong to a different tribe, the quiet observers, who act only when the time calls. If you've ever felt different, if you've ever felt exhausted from needing to be right, if you've ever wanted to live more lightly in this market, then maybe you're not lost. Maybe you're just walking slower and deeper. And if you've made it this far, I believe one thing you already carry within you: the intuition of the people I once met. All you need to do is allow yourself to sit quietly long enough for the noise to fade. This channel is not a place for you to learn new tools, to take more trades, or to run faster. This is a place for you to return to a very still part of yourself, the part that has seen every crash and still stood tall. I'm not better than you. I just broke earlier and was lucky to meet a few people who had nothing to prove. They left no footprints, but I kept a few fragments of memory, and today I'm sharing them with you. If some part of you is nodding along, then maybe this is not just a video. Maybe it's a quiet calling for those who are tired of holding on and want to come home. I am Ghost in the chart. I'm still here, still observing, still waiting. Not for a perfect setup, but for that moment when you and I can return to the market not as people who need to win, but as those who always do.